Welcome, everyone, to another astral interview. And here with me, I have Yvette Farkas. To begin with, Yvette, why don't you tell us a little bit about your past, your life? Well, who's Yvette?
Wow, that's a tall order. I was born in Budapest, Hungary. My parents and I immigrated to Canada when I was still a child. And I grew up there, the traditional, typical immigrant story of challenge and hardship and learning a new language and integrating into a whole new society.
Mhm.
Growing up, I was really a very shy introvert, and I found it very difficult to connect with people. I had a lot of anxieties, a lot of fears and worries, and I had a lot of struggle with things like perfectionism and feeling like I need to be good enough and feeling that I need to prove my value, my self-worth. So these were some of the main topics that at the time I didn't realize I was working through and navigating, but
Right.
later on in life, it's something that my own self-reflective journey and healing journeys um, became a part of that uh, understanding of where some of who I've become stemmed from. And as we all know, a lot of those challenges are very universal, and I think many of us can relate to that. Later on, I studied traditional medicines, acupuncture, Taoist medicine,
Oh,
Ayurveda,
nice.
energy healing. I grew up in a dojo, so I have 30 years of martial arts behind me. I've traveled around the world studying with different amazing mentors, masters, practitioners, therapists. I've been so incredibly blessed to have come across incredible people with whom I've learned so much. I've been humbled so many times. And
Oh,
every day I think, wow, there's so much to learn and there's so much I don't know. And actually, that's a beautiful thing because when you keep yourself empty and curious and open, that's sort of that magic pathway where you can get into that flow and be open to the magic of the universe and growth.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned you were born in Budapest. So tell me about a little bit about Budapest and your time there as a child. What was that like before you?
During that time, it was still under communist regime.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons my parents immigrated. They wanted me to be raised in a society where freedom of speech was allowed, where you could actually speak your mind and not be fearful that the secret police would come and knock at your door at 3 in the morning.
Right.
So this was a very real concern in that time in Hungary. I was very young when I moved to Canada with my parents.
Hmm.
But what I remember is the feeling in my body, the feeling of tension, the feeling of when you leave the house, you have to act a certain way. You can't say certain things. You have to be cautious. So you weren't allowed to really fully be yourself. There was a lot of restriction.
Right.
And this is something that I carried in my cells and my body for a long time. And it's one of the things that caused some anxiety and worry when it came to speaking up and speaking my truth and learning how to say boundaries and ask for my needs to be met. Simple things that
Right.
seem so easy, but actually they're incredibly difficult when you have a
Right.
background like that. Yeah.
So then, okay, so you come to Canada, and how old were you when you came to Canada,
I
approximately?
was almost 4. So still
Oh, I
quite.
was 4 when I came to Canada too.
Oh, really? Where
Yeah,
did you come
I
from?
was born in East Africa, Tanzania.
Ah, okay.
And
Okay.
our homes were nationalized in Tanzania, so we were kicked out of Tanzania essentially.
Oh,
And
wow.
thanks to our spiritual leader, he made it so all his followers could leave Tanzania and move to Canada.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, you understand that
I
journey.
hear
It's
you. Yeah, when I came here, I had to do, the language thing too. My English words had all these faults in them when I spoke, and so I had to go to therapy for that. So then what made Yvette look into healing, and how did you get to the dojo and martial arts, and what caused all those things to happen? Talk a little bit about that.
when I was very little, when I was about 4 or 5, my dad privately at home started to train me in martial arts. He was trained in judo and he had spent many years training in judo in Europe. He continued that when we came to Canada.
Right.
He started teaching me as a very young child. Then when I was about 7 years old, seven and a half, I joined the local dojo where I had the good fortune of having the most incredible mentor in my martial arts teacher, Mick Walsh is his name. I want to call him out and really send appreciation and gratitude his way.
Uh-huh.
The way he taught and trained was the way some of the world's top coaches train their athletes, their executive, their business leaders, their
Right.
people. He integrated not only martial arts mindset strategies, safety techniques, he also incorporated elements of personal growth and development, a championship mindset, how to overcome what we perceive as failure, how to recognize when we're being nervous and when it's a genuine fear that's telling us we need to be cautious versus our ego not liking something because it's unfamiliar and saying, okay,
Right.
you need to break through.
Right.
We actually had to sit down and write goal sheets, short-term, mid-term, long-term goals. And as an 8-year-old who was just starting to learn how to write, this was a big deal. This was 30 years ago where goals weren't commonly talked about as they are in this day and age.
Right.
So already, I mean, what fortune I had to have such an incredible instructor. So this definitely paved a certain pathway for me. And martial arts, I loved it. I loved it for so many reasons, even though I was terrible at it, Shahiroz. I had no natural ability at all. At all. I mean, really, it was almost comical. But I showed up every day and I
Right.
trained at home with my dad as well. So there was 7 days a week training every day.
From what
And it
age?
was a lot of training since I was 4. And then about seven or
Wow.
8 years old is when I joined the dojo. Yeah, so I had a lot of training. Every day I would come home, I'd have my dinner, and then I'd go straight to the dojo and continue training. When I got home, then I made the time for homework, and then I go to bed.
Right.
So it was a very structured, disciplined way I was raised. And my
Oh,
parents were very strict, especially my mom. That's how the martial arts began. What it gave me was a feeling of competence and confidence. Now, here's the difference. I had confidence because I was able to develop skills by practicing them over and over and over again.
mhm.
What I didn't have was self esteem. Self esteem and self confidence are two very different things. Your feeling of self worth versus your ability to do something well that you can learn as a skill.
Right.
Feeling of
It's interesting how you
knowing
make that
doing
distinction.
something. Yeah, yeah. It took me a long time to distinguish between the two because I knew I was confident. I could get up on a stage in front of thousands of people and execute amazing performances. I had no issue with that. But when it
Right.
came to asking for my needs, I felt so small. I didn't feel I was worthy of asking for my needs. I never wanted to burden anybody. I was always very shy and quiet and did my best to handle my own issues and challenges quietly myself without asking for help. I mean, God help me if I had to ask for help. For me, it was the most awful thing in the world,
Right.
which I learned, of course, was not a very healthy view of strength. I mean, vulnerability is such a gift and such a power.
Right.
But in order to reach that and be willing to be vulnerable, that takes a lot of courage and self growth and willingness. That was a really big journey for me. One of the things that got me to start that journey of self reflection and growth was physical pain. As a child, I had so many stomach issues. I would have dinner or lunch and I'd be in the fetal position, rocking back and forth because I had such intense stomach cramps. No one could understand what was going on.
Right.
When I was a teenager, when I was 13, I developed arthritis that was so bad, I actually lost the use of my right hand for 2 years. I couldn't even hold a pencil because the arthritis was that bad.
But it
And
looks like your arthritis is better now. Obviously, you're moving your hands with great ease.
I completely reversed it. I completely reversed it. And now I teach people how to do that. Yeah.
I'd love for you to speak on that a bit because there's so many people suffering from arthritis in the world.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go down that direction for a little bit. So when I was 13,
Mhm.
I realized very quickly at some point that there was a lot of stiffness in my right hand. And that stiffness developed into pain. And then I couldn't even move my fingers very much. I went to the doctor. They said, juvenile arthritis, here are your medications. You'll have this for the rest of your life. It's genetic. Your grandparents have arthritis. Your great grandparents have arthritis. It's unfortunate you started so young, but that's life. This is basically what I was told. I
Right.
didn't
But
take
we
the
know
medication.
now about genetics, things aren't necessarily genetic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Shahiroz. I have the same opinion,
Yeah.
especially having lived through it twice. This went on for 2 years, and I did everything possible from a holistic perspective, herbs, changed my diet a little bit. I tried manual therapies, physio, lots of different things, meditation, visualization. Nothing really helped it. A little bit, but not enough. Then when I was 15, I remember this so clearly, Shahiroz. It was like yesterday. One afternoon, I had this aha moment. I made this connection. I thought to myself, huh, why am I such a perfectionist? Why am I striving so hard to be the top athlete, the top student, the top speaker, the best daughter, the best kind of friend? Why do I show up for everybody else and not take care of myself? Why
Wow.
am I not allowing myself to sleep enough? Why am I constantly tense, anxious all the time, stressed? This whole time, I thought I had a winner's mindset. I thought this was how somebody who wants to excel in life thought. But who am I doing this for? My parents don't expect me to come home with straight A's and be the number one in everything. They've never once said that. They're
Right.
happy if I'm happy. So
Right.
if it's not my parents, is it because I'm nervous about what my community or friends will say? They don't expect us either. So I had a very logical kind of
Right.
thinking.
Right.
I went through everyone, process of elimination, and I felt I don't have to impress any of these people. So what's the common factor here? It's me. I'm the issue. I'm the
Right.
common denominator.
Right.
So I'm the one who's doing this to myself.
Right.
What's the reason behind it? Who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
And I realized when I asked myself that question, it's not who, it's why. Why am I doing this? And Shai was like, honestly, I think it's the grace of God that I even had this type of thinking at that
Yeah.
time,
Epiphany,
because I don't
right?
know where these thoughts came from. Just one afternoon, I started to hear these questions in my mind. And I realized why I'm doing it is because I feel I need to prove my worthiness to be loved and kept safe. It was such an aha moment because that instantly connected all my behaviors, all my mindset strategies, the reason for me making certain choices
Right.
all stem from this one thing. I want to prove I'm worthy of love and safety. That's what it came down to. I mean, what an incredible realization.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And so it happened to you naturally. You weren't seeking it and you didn't go out looking for it. It happened quite naturally for you, right?
Yes, yes. What was even more amazing is that in that moment, I made a firm decision that I'm going to step up and advocate for myself, and I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to make choices that are good for me. And of course, this isn't a perfect fix, but this is the next layer of healing, right? And there's going to be another layer and another layer. But that next step, that choice to no longer push myself relentlessly to excel beyond what is healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, made such a difference that the next morning when I woke up, I had full use of my hand back. I
Oh,
was
good Lord.
stunned. I was stunned.
Oh my
My
good Lord.
parents were amazed. I mean, it wasn't that it was a little bit less stiff or there was less pain. It was like I never had arthritis ever to begin with. The
And,
doctor couldn't
and,
believe
and
it.
it's been that
He
way
had no idea.
since.
Since I've never had problems since, and this was 30 years ago.
Oh my God. That just goes to say how our thoughts, our mind affects our physical body. That's bottom line, right?
Yes. Yes. And it makes you realize how powerful we are. Wow,
Yes.
our
So,
minds are incredible. And we respond to our thoughts and our feelings so powerfully. Imagine what we can do when we access that and tap into it.
right.
So this was a huge learning for me. And that really opened me up towards investigating more of this mind-body connection and holistic healing methodologies after.
Wow. That's that's brilliant. That's amazing. And like, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years and I've heard a lot of healing stories, but what you just shared there just emphasizes the whole fact that the mind affects the body. In your case, it was almost organic that that you realized it. Like it was almost like use your words, grace, right? The grace of God. And and so what do you think caused you to have those thoughts that day? This is important because it reveals to us the system of the mind, body, and soul, in a sense.
This is a great question. And I can only, I don't have a definite answer. I can only guess.
Mhm.
What I remember from that time is that I had come to a point where I had enough. I was exhausted. I was asking my soul for answers. I was asking for help from the universe, from my soul, from spirit, from God, whatever you call that higher dimensional self
Right,
consciousness. I was requesting help and I thought, I can't keep going on like this. I would like healing. I would like to understand what is happening.
right,
So, the way my mind works personally, it's not enough to give a reason or an answer. I would like to understand it. I want to reverse engineer it so I can then share that as well and have a
help
clear
others.
understanding of that connection.
Right,
This was really the connection because there was no other change that I made. The fact that it was instantaneous, less than 24 hours later, it was 100% healed. 100% healed. I mean, there's no greater proof. Boom,
right.
right there. It's just amazing.
Tell me about the different modalities that you embarked on or studied then now and what you learned from your experience with them.
I went to a private school to study Taoist medicine and acupuncture and another course in Ayurveda. I worked in a clinic in Toronto for many years, actually several clinics. I practiced these modalities. With my background in martial arts, I incorporated a lot of the mindset strategies that coaches are using to this day.
Right,
It was really a mix of holistic consulting and coaching mixed with the action, the herbs, the acupuncture, the acupressure, the energetics of these modalities. We would go through extensive questioning to try to make those connections between the mind and the body and
right,
understand what's behind the symptoms. This has really been the driving force to get to the root cause, not just to look at what's happening and try to relieve the symptoms, which you want to do to give some relief, but you
right.
want to actually reverse it by understanding why you created this in the first place. And I'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, like you
Um,
use the words why you created it in the first place.
yes.
That's the key, right? That, sometimes somebody would get upset with the idea that you created your own disease, but the fact is that there's nothing else that created it.
Mhm. I would love to share some examples that
Please.
illustrate this. So I'll start with this. Our minds, when we have a thought, it creates an electrical charge. Our
Right.
hearts create a magnetic field when we have feelings, emotions, which I know you really know this, Shiros, as well. We can talk about this. So this is our electromagnetic frequency, which is
Right.
measurable
Right.
by science,
Right.
commonly referred to as an aura. And some people have the sensitivity to visually see it or feel it, but it's
Mhm.
also measurable. Now, our thoughts and our feelings create certain chemical processes, chemical cocktails made up of hormones, various essences, etc., that flood our bloodstream. So when we are stressed, we're fearful, we're angry, we're tense, we engage the sympathetic, we have fear-based, anger-based hormones flooding our system, and that has a certain effect.
Right.
Versus the opposite. When we are relaxed, we're soothed, and it creates a different set of cocktails that flood our system. That also has a certain effect. Acidic versus basic, tense versus relaxed. Now, if somebody is really tense and they're holding a fist this tight for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, eventually you're going to get exhausted. You're going to have certain symptoms. You'll probably have chronic fatigue or some variation and various other issues. So it's so important to notice how we're holding ourselves throughout the day, right? So I'll talk about allergies and arthritis in a few examples here.
Okay.
In the clinic, we had a lady come in who had a severe allergy to white flowers and oranges. She had nearly died multiple times because she accidentally came in contact with these two items.
Okay.
Now, we had asked her so many questions to try to understand when this started, why she thinks she became allergic to it, what happened in her life around that time. And she couldn't really remember exactly what happened. She told us that her husband had died. It was very stressful. But other than that, she couldn't think of anything.
Right.
So we worked on boosting her immune system and strengthening her resilience while we continued to ask gently, trying to stimulate the subconscious to have a memory. And one day, in one of the treatments, she suddenly had an epiphany. She said, "Oh my gosh, I remember where I first saw the white flowers and the bowl of oranges." She said to us, "I walked home from work, opened the door, and went into the living room. When I told you that my husband had died, what I didn't say is that he actually committed suicide. He had hung himself, and next to the body was a bowl of oranges and a vase of flowers on the dining room table." And in that instant, her mind made the association of death to these two items. And in the intelligence of the mind, in order to protect her, created an allergy. Totally subconscious, instantaneous. She had no conscious understanding of what just occurred in those
Right.
seconds.
Right.
And then for the next few years, she had severe allergies to these two items. As soon as she realized what the connection was, she relaxed. She
Right.
realized,
Yeah.
I don't need to be afraid of these two items. They don't pose any threat. It's not dangerous. It
Right.
was an intelligent response in that moment to protect me. An allergy is there to protect you. One of the two reasons you have allergies. One is to protect you. Because she no longer needed that protection, and she had done a lot of therapy over her husband's death, she was able to release the allergy. We know this because she wasn't allergic to these two items later on. 6 months
Right.
later, when we followed up, no problems. She was eating oranges again. She loved oranges. She really missed eating them.
Right.
And then a
Right.
year later, we followed up again, same thing, no allergies. It was that easy. The hard part was making the connection and understand what was behind
Right.
the allergy in the first
Right.
place,
Right.
right?
I have a similar example. I don't know if you're familiar with emotion code.
Yeah,
Uh,
Dr. Brian Wilson.
I was just in a class and they were doing an example and they had us pick something, right? For me, it was, well, I have aversion to raisins.
Mhm.
I don't eat raisins. I don't know why I don't like raisins. It's not like it's an allergy or anything, but I just don't like them. And so through doing the process, it was determined that when I was very young, like 1 or 2 years old, we were at a funeral. And at a funeral, they give raisins to us, after the funeral process. And it's just something to sweeten your mouth, to bring sweetness back in your being. I saw this scene where my child, me, is wiping the tears off my mom's eyes as they put a raisin in her mouth, or she puts a raisin in her mouth. And that was the reason why I didn't like raisins. Isn't that amazing? And when I realized that it had to do with that incident, you're right, it relaxed me and I was able to eat raisins the next day, and I haven't had an aversion to raisins since. It's so amazing how the mind connects to our actions too, like what we do and how we live, and everything really,
Mhm. That's an amazing story, Shahiroz. It's such a great example.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Illustrates it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you talked about allergies, and I mentioned an example of something where it's not even an allergy, it's just a habit or it's just a aversion for God knows what reason. Some people don't like nuts, for example, right? And all of a sudden they can't eat nuts and it's considered an allergy. But there was probably something that happened at some point in their life to to give them that allergy or aversion.
Hmm. Yes. I mentioned that there were two main reasons for allergies. So one was to protect you. It's
Protect,
the
yeah,
mind's reaction to protect you from pain and suffering, perceived pain and suffering.
right,
Second reason is if you have a heavy load of toxicity in your system. So looking at our environment, besides mental distress and toxicity, we have so many chemicals on our foods, in our crops, in the air, in the water. I could go on and on. And so this tends to gunk up the body. There's
right,
also parasites, heavy metals, and mold, which really make it challenging for the body to clear out, constantly clear out, and be functioning at a high level, enabling you to actually absorb the nutrients that you're ingesting through good food, supplements, good mindsets. The second time I had arthritis, I was in my 30s. So I've had them twice. This time it was in my left hand. I remembered the situation when I was a teenager and I went through, is it mindset? Am I upset? Is there something bothering me? Is it perfectionism? Not enoughness? What is going on? None of them really fit. And then I thought, okay, let's do a bioresonance scan and test to see if there's anything in my system because I had this intuition that there was something inside causing this. And when I had the scan done, it showed that indeed, yes, there was a high level of toxicity, particularly parasites and mold. One of the reasons for the inflammation in the joints was because of the toxic output from some of these parasites. Now, what was interesting from the scan is the scan didn't show the end result, which was an issue with the hand. It showed the problem with the digestive parasites. As soon as I used the scan to clear out the parasites, the arthritis cleared up. That it was that easy. So finding the cause is such a key point. It is so important.
right.
And this bioresonance scan is incredible for that. Incredible. And it's one of the reasons I went and learned how to use this technology, which I use in my practice now. And most of my clients I see remotely, sometimes in person. And it does this incredible detailed scan looking at your auric field, vitamin deficiencies, is there anemia, allergies, food sensitivities, mold, bacteria, parasites, what is happening in your system. It gives you this holistic picture of health and the reasons behind inflammation and issues. So then it's a beautiful starting point for you to say, okay, so this is what we have right now, and this is how we can shift that. And there's always a way to make it better, to shift it, to clear out the toxins. And it's so gentle. It's so
Right.
safe. It's gentle, non-invasive. It's a beautiful technology. It's amazing.
So tell me a little bit about the technology then that you're using and what exactly it entails.
Yeah, so the bioresonance scan uses certain frequencies. It has a database of frequencies. For example, it has the frequencies for various parasites, for heavy metals, for molds, for bacterias. Every living cell has its own unique vibrational frequency. As you know, it's like a fingerprint, a
Right,
unique energetic frequency. It's
right,
its own fingerprint. So this has been mapped and put into the database. When we scan somebody, if they're in person, they put on what looks like headphones and then we scan them that way. Otherwise, we use a photo and specific information that we input into the system. And then that way, through quantum entanglement, they will be scanned, even if they're on the other side of the world. And it's just as accurate.
so you made a distinction, for lack of a better word, about how the body or the individual plays a huge part in the finding of the root cause.
Mhm.
It's really very dependent on the individual. So speak about
Yeah.
those two things a little bit.
Yeah. So when I'm working with somebody, most of the time they come to me when they're at their limit. They've been to see every specialist, every practitioner, and they have no one else to turn to. And then they said, okay, I'll try this.
Right.
Right. What ends up happening is that the mind is open to different possibilities. They've already had conversations with all the other specialists. At this point, what I do with my clients is say, okay, this is what the technology is showing. Now let's reverse engineer it and say what's happening in the mind that's causing some of these symptoms. For example, when I see a lot of joint inflammation, our conversations will start around perfectionism. Do you feel like you're enough? Do you feel you have to prove yourself? How is your sense of self-value? This is where we start, because inevitably certain mindsets and attitudes and thinking patterns will create certain physiological patterns. It's directly correlated. Yeah.
So you could give me a list. You could say if you're experiencing this, then more than likely this is a mental construct that you've built that exists that we need to break down.
Yes. So, for example, I've had clients that had MS, multiple sclerosis diagnoses, and Dr. Gabor Mate talks about the
Yes,
same correlations.
absolutely. Yeah.
I've seen the same thing with my clients. For MS, these are the people who are so nice. They are the nicest people ever. They never say no. They are always there for everyone. They're part of every committee. They say yes to every volunteer option. They never want to ruffle the feathers. They never have conflict with anyone. No, they're nice, but to their own destruction.
Right.
So this is where we have to make a shift internally. They need to come to this realization that they are lovable, they are worthy, and they need to love themselves. Stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eye, and start saying, I love you. I love you. You're amazing. You're worthy. You're incredible. You're here for so much good. It's okay to have my needs met. It's okay to say no. It's okay to create boundaries. I will not die if I say no. Because in the mind of someone with MS, typically, they would actually rather die than say no because it's that painful and difficult.
Wow.
This is the mindset that we work with when we have someone with the MS symptoms. So each individual really, it's incredible, Shahiroz. I mean, the patterns of thinking and what that looks like physically in the body. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. See, what a revelation, right? What a revelation it is to recognize how powerful we are. Like, ultimately, we're the creators, not only of, let's go a little deeper now. We're talking about disease and we're talking about allergies and we're talking about physical manifestations of our mind and thoughts, but there can be positive manifestation of our mind and thoughts too, right?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. Same thing on the other side of the spectrum.
It
Yeah.
has to be, right?
Yes. Yes. It's
So,
amazing.
so,
We're
so
so powerful.
we're so powerful. So let's talk about that a little bit and your experiences with that, can we?
Mhm. Yes. So in terms of feeling powerful, yeah, whenever I've made a big shift, it usually started with a strong decision, and a belief that this has already happened. I've decided this will happen. I don't know how I'm going to make the money. I don't know how I'm going to create this opportunity. It's not just that I have faith or I hope this will happen. It's a choice where you can't shift out of it. It's like, I know this is happening. End of story.
Right. There's no other possibility other than this.
Support that. And that sounds very easy. And it's actually, it's very simple, but it can be very hard to get to that level, to that point.
Right.
And there have been times in my life where I had those moments and other
Is
times
it
where I
isn't it
definitely,
always when you've hit a wall and there's no other place you can go and then you come to that conclusion?
so often. And yet it doesn't need to be that
I
way.
know it
We
doesn't
could
need
do
to be
that
that way.
in a joyful, happy state, but most people are lazy when they're in a joyful, happy state. They
Right.
don't, are not so interested in self-growth and elevating to that level. Usually pain is needed for most humans to actually make a real move and a real shift. But
Wow.
it's not necessary. We can do that in a state of joy and contentment too.
Yeah, suffering is an option, as I hear.
Yes. Oh, that's difficult to say to someone who actually is actively suffering,
I know,
but
exactly.
yeah.
I have a story. So this lady was diagnosed with a tumor, a lung tumor, a 4-inch lung tumor.
Mhm.
And I was doing NLP or hypnosis at the time. And a friend comes to me and says, "Can you help her?" I'm like, "How am I going to help her? I'm just starting this course, right?" Before my conversation with her, I said, "God, please help me help her with whatever it is that I can do to contribute to bring this situation to a better place."
Mhm.
And so as soon as I get on the phone, it's like this voice in me says, "Tell her it's her fault." I'm like, "What?" I listened to the voice and I said, "I have to say that whatever is happening to you right now, it's your fault." And of course, that led to, "You don't know what you're talking about," and, swearing and anger and all this stuff. After all that, there was this pin drop silence. And after this pin drop silence, I thought she hung up, right? So I'm like, "Hello, hello," right? She's like, "I have to go. I can't talk to you right now. I'm sorry." And she hung up. Next day, I follow up with her, and she tells me that I was absolutely right. She knows exactly when, exactly how she did this to herself. She was in human resources. All these application would go across her desk, right? That people have this, but every time that happened, they would get free time off, right?
Mhm.
And she wanted free time. She's like, "Why can't I have free time off?"
Yes.
And so lo and behold, she creates this so that she could have free time off. And then we have this conversation. She apologizes to me for everything that she said. She was really worried about her appointment, her MRI that was coming up. She didn't want to have this MRI, right? She thought it would bring bad news. All I said to her, again, I asked for help to what to her. All I said was, anything can happen in 2 weeks. Anything, right? God just has to snap his fingers. And at that time, I was representing God as a male, but God just has to snap his fingers and the situation can change within a snap. The next day, she calls me now and she said she had this dream where she went to her workplace and everyone's saying she's glowing and she looks radiant and they're so glad that the cancer's gone. Her doctor calls her and says she had just had a test of some kind. And the doctor calls her and says, "We don't, okay, so this day she tells me that she has this dream. She also has a feeling that goes along with the dream that says her cancer is gone. Like
Mhm.
she had this automatic feeling, like she just knew it was gone because of this dream she had. The next day, the doctor says she doesn't have to go to her MRI because they have to do these different tests before she can do her MRI because now her tests are saying there is no cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, so tests say there was cancer. Like, this is an interesting story, right? Because the tests say there isn't cancer. And this isn't the first time I've seen this. I've seen it multiple times in my life where this has happened, all because of the individual and their own experience with their own being.
Mhm.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah. It's amazing. But she made that connection and you helped her take ownership and responsibility and take back her power. And
Right,
thereby she could also do it because she
right,
was projecting it. It's outside. This is happening to me. She realized, I did this and I did this for me.
right.
I can change this. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. It's a remarkable story. And it reminds me of another experience I had when I was a bit younger. I had broken my knee very badly. And in the hospital, I was told that I was a star, and I had many, many physicians coming to see me. I didn't understand why. And then one of the physicians said, "Oh, you don't know. There was a memo that went out to all the hospitals to say, if you want to see the worst knee break of your career, this is it. This is your chance." And no orthopedic surgeon would even take my case to do the surgery because they said, "I can't fix this. I can't do anything with this. It's that bad." It was at a time where I was teaching martial arts. I loved martial arts. I was completely dedicated. And in that moment, my whole career ended. My life changed.
Right.
It was a very difficult journey physically, but especially mentally to deal with that fallout. I was in bed for almost 6 months in a cast from my hip to my ankles. Every 2 weeks, I went in for x-rays to see how the bones were healing, and they weren't. After 3 months, the doctor took me aside and said, "For some reason, your body's just not mending. So I'm going to give you a few more weeks, and if there's no improvement, we're going to have a different conversation." So I went home, and on the way home, I had this internal dialogue of, okay, enough's enough. I've been lying around in the bed. I've been doing the homeopathy, the acupressure, the mental training, the breath work, all the stuff, all the actions,
Right.
and nothing's happening. Where am I stuck here? And there was just this belief of, oh, poor me, my career's ended. I'm going to have to make a change. I don't know who I am anymore because without the martial arts, I have no identity anymore. My whole life revolved around Yvette, the martial arts instructor.
Right.
Right. I lost that identity and I felt totally lost. I was a blank slate and I had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And this was where I was stuck. I felt very angry.
Right.
And robbed,
Right.
so much training and investment in this. I thought, okay, so obviously I knew this was coming on some level because there were a lot of clues leading up to that accident.
Right.
I didn't heed the clues. What happens when you're not listening to the clues? They get bigger and bigger and bigger. The slaps become hits until you're brought to your knees and forced to reflect and make a change.
Right.
So that's what happened. As soon as I admitted that, just like this client of yours admitted, yeah, it is my fault. I did do this. I asked for it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to look like this,
Yeah.
but I did ask for it. That's how powerful I am. On my case, I thought, yeah, there were definitely signs where I needed to shift out and look at other talents I have, develop other parts of myself, share different parts of Yvette with the world, because I'm not here just to do this one thing, which is beautiful if that's somebody else's path. But I knew deep down that it wasn't mine totally. But I didn't want to admit it to myself, right? That day on the way back from the hospital, I said, okay, so this is it. I'm letting it go. I'm going to grieve it. And I'm going to open up to whatever amazing new path this is going to lead me to.
Right.
And my knee is healed. It's totally healed because I need my leg for the next amazing version of my life story, whatever that looks like.
Right.
That was all I did. That was all I did. Admitted where I was causing myself to be stuck and why, and took ownership of that. 2 weeks later, I went in for x-rays again. The x-ray technician leaves the room, which they're not allowed to do. And he actually said that, "I never do this. Miss, don't tell anyone. I never do this. I'm not allowed to come and talk to the patients. I have to ask you, what did you do?" And I said to him, "What do you mean, what did I do?" He said, "Your knee looks like it just did 3 to 4 months worth of healing in 2 weeks. This is your scan from 2 weeks ago, and this is you today. I can't believe it's the same person." And I told him what I did. And he said, "I just don't understand. I've never seen this in my life." So I went up to the doctor's office and he said to me, "Yeah, there seems to be some issue with the scan, so I'm sending you down to redo the x-rays." Make any sense? So I went down to redo the x-rays and go back up to the doctor's office and he says, "I've never seen this. It's honestly like a medical miracle. You've done all the healing that you should have been doing the last 3, 4 months. I don't know how this happened. I can't explain it, but keep doing whatever you're doing. We don't need to have that option B conversation now. So it's amazing. That's how fast the healing can be. But you know, the challenge is always facing yourself, right?
Right.
Looking yourself in the mirror and saying, okay, what's really going on behind this? What's really going on? Be brutally honest with yourself, right?
Right.
That's often the toughest part.
Wow. So I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Helga Clark, who used to fix bones just by twisting arms. And are you familiar with her?
Dr. Hulda Clark, yes. She also did a lot of work with parasites and has her zapper,
Absolutely.
all of that. Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
I read her books. Amazing, amazing
Yeah.
lady. Yeah.
Amazing lady. Yeah. How simple these things can be and how complicated we make them, you know?
Yes. I think emergency medicine is amazing at what they do. Putting you back
Absolutely.
together after a car accident or anything like that, they're incredible. Where traditional medicines really shine are in long-term health, dealing with chronic conditions, helping you make a shift so that you don't repeat the injury, the accident, the situation.
Right.
I think both of them together could be amazing friends and allies. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. I wish there was a way to
Integrate this more.
integrate these two
Mm.
modalities. The other thing we want to talk about right now is where are we right now? So you went and learned all these different modalities. You didn't answer my question though. What other modalities did you mentioned acupuncture
Modalities
and
medicine,
acupressure
acupuncture,
and you mentioned um
beta,
and are
and
those the only modalities that you embarked on, or is there energetic healing
there's
modalities?
energetic healing. I also studied Reiki.
Okay.
I began to study various shamanic techniques, especially when I moved back to Hungary as an adult. I reconnected with the spiritual roots there of the Huns. I lived in a yurt for 3 years and I
You
really,
lived in a yurt for 3 years? Oh,
what an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. Yurts are incredible. You're really one with nature, but still comfortable.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Drumming for healing and mantras and various mindset strategies and coaching techniques. And of course, the bioresonance. I studied daily for 2 years to really be able to use that technology
And
highly
so,
effectively.
and so then that's where you probably learned about the mind, heart,
Connection.
coherence, connection. Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a lot of coaching programs myself. I've studied with various mentors over the years. I've had the amazing fortune to meet incredible people, read their books, do their courses, take part in their workshops, and really be taken under their wing to be shown different ways of approaching situations. And you know, the saying, there are many paths up the mountain. It's so true. One way isn't better than the other. It's just what is going to be most aligned and most effective for you. Sometimes there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to happen.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I believe all our lives, you mentioned mentors, that we all have mentors that come into our lives in different ways to help us get back on track or help us deal with some of our suffering and as it comes in our life. It's up to us to recognize who they are and to heed what they bring to us, the message they bring to us.
Yes. And I want to say two other people here, you, Shiroz, and David Sarita and his technologies. I mean, you both, with your inner circle and the incredible work that you both do together,
Thank you.
it's amazing. Whenever I hold groups, I have various group intuitive masterminds and other programs I facilitate. I have the frequencies playing in the background to really support that container. I've had the most amazing insights and experiences by using the star coil and some of the other technologies that David has.
So
And in
tell,
the when we speak, you have such insightful questions and words of wisdom that really I can see all of us who are listening just go back and say, wow, I need time to sit with this. I need to reflect on this. Yeah.
So I want to go into a couple of things before we get into that category. When I was talking about the different examples we shared with each other, there seems to be a point where this part of us takes over that is sort of overlooking everything. And then there's the part of us that is actually in the situation that we're trapped in. And that individual who's trapped has a totally different personality than the individual, the part of us, not even individual, it's a part of us that has this overview of what's happening. Do you want to talk
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about that and how one, like when you're in it, you don't realize you're in it until what happens?
Mm. This is a great conversation. This is me in brainstorm, just thinking out loud here.
Absolutely.
As you're talking, one of the things that comes to mind is how we dream. And there's so many different dreams, dream yoga, lucid dreaming, all kinds of levels of dreaming. You can dream from the first perspective, second, third
Right.
person.
Right.
In my dreams, for example, I'm a part of everyone. So I do first person, I have the overview, and I also experience what each character in my dream is. So I'm the instigator, the person creating the difficulty, or I'm the one who's running away. I'm the one who's actually the warrior. I'm the peacekeeper. Like I experience everybody's perspective. And
Right.
at the same time, I have this expanded conscious part of me that's overseeing the whole dream at the same time as I'm individually experiencing different characters.
Right.
I think it might be something similar that we might have in life. I'm sure there are many different answers. I'm reflecting as we're speaking now of my experience with this is oftentimes after meditation or when I'm really quiet, I'm listening to the wind blowing the leaves in the trees. I'm watching the sunset. My nervous system is calming down. I feel greatly soothed. This is when I actually have the inspired thought, the connections,
Right.
the insights. I'm not trying to find a solution for. They just pop into my consciousness, into my mind, and I have this incredible moment of overview and seeing all the connections. It happens in the quiet moments.
Right.
It happens in the quiet moments, typically. Occasionally, under great duress, when you're really pushed and you're saying, okay, the grace of God or something, universe, help me. I need assistance now. This is when you see people with amazing feats, mothers
Yeah.
with the kids under the car, they lift the car with one hand, and it's possible.
Right.
In that moment, there is nothing that's limiting us.
Right.
So it's so interesting. How come there are only these moments that we tend to experience that? And how, if we can't experience it, that already confirms we're capable of this. Yes.
Right.
Two is then saying, how can I consciously activate and tap into this part of myself, this level of knowing, this gift, this this part of me that seems to be part of everybody, and we've just been asleep to it. How do we access this again? There's so many techniques that we've been taught and that are available to us. I think they're very helpful, but it's also very much an inner journey. You have to find what works for you and try a few different things and stick with it. It's a bit like compounding interest with finances. Every day you do a little bit of your spiritual work, every day you do a little bit more, a little bit more. Eventually,
Yeah.
you'll have more and more breakthroughs. It's a journey. It's constantly unraveling like the onion. You figure out another way of reaching that part of
Right.
yourself
And
and
it's
discover
limitless.
it's limitless. We are limitless, multidimensional beings of light, of consciousness, of love. We're amazing. How do we keep reminding ourselves of that and keep tapping into that and coming from that space, right?
Right.
This is where they say, well, start your day with positive reflections and intentions and meditation and barefoot walking and da 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 da.
Right.
How do we do it when we're stressed and when we're in a challenge and when we're upset and we're
So
triggered?
it's always, I believe it's always someone from outside of us that informs us what we're doing to ourselves. It's up to us to recognize that that's what's happening in that moment. The only way that can be done is if we're conscious.
how do we become conscious to that level and recognize when that's happening?
Exactly. And the only answer I've come up with is to stay conscious, stay in the present moment. Many teachers will tell you to stay in the present moment. If you're staying in the present moment, then you're actually somebody who will not have to deal with the level of suffering. There is no avoiding the suffering, but you'll recognize when you enter suffering, I'm now entering suffering. Now up to me to recognize I'm entering suffering, whether it's to do with body, emotions, mental states, or whatever. It's just recognizing that, okay, this isn't what I want. There's a better option. I've just entered a place where I've I'm in this situation and I can change this. It's me that created it and it's me that can change it. My friend Thomas used to say, are you smiling? If you're not, then you're not where you want to be. And it's time to shift that.
I think the more aware we become, the faster we're able to do that. When we're in the triggered state, sometimes that suffering can go on for a long time, and then you realize, wait a minute, I just recognize I'm in this state. And the more you practice becoming conscious and aware of it, the shorter that time frame becomes.
Right.
And you can pick it out of that, or recognize it at least, and make a different choice in terms of the negative thinking spirals, for example.
So let's talk about the David Sarita phase then. And tell me then, what brought you to find the David Sarita products and services, and what have they done for you in your life?
I'm really fascinated by the frequencies of our world, of our planet. I remember seeing some of David's YouTube videos where he talks about this. He talks about the natural sacred geometry found in nature and what that looks like, even from the perspective of a bee and a flower, how they communicate, what the frequencies represent. Sacred geometry found in old texts and in ancient civilizations, the frequencies we use to heal ourselves. He demonstrated with his products how that can work. He discussed a lot about disharmonious EMFs. And I really love how he made a differentiation between disharmonic EMFs versus natural, because EMFs in and of themselves are not a bad thing. Our sun, our planets, our stars, they all emit EMFs, a frequency, right? That's why it feels so wonderful when you're stepping barefoot onto our beloved planet Earth. We instantly recharge, we relax, our nervous system goes, thank you. Because it's a harmonious EMF and it balances us. What's not found in nature, all the disharmonic EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies from the microwaves, from the cellular towers, the phone system, the radio, the Wi-Fi, the cables running in the walls, that's very disturbing to the mind and the body. Actually, when I do a bioresonance scan, I will see that. Oftentimes, and I'll come back to my answer, but I just want to say this quickly.
Please.
When I see the auric field of somebody from the scan, the electromagnetic field around them, if there's a lot of weakness and indents and holes around their head, I'll ask them, where are you sleeping? Is your head next to the wall? 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. And then I'll say, please check the wiring of the house. Do you have cables running up and down the wall right behind you where your head is? Most of the times the answer is yes. And as soon as they shift their bed or change where they're sleeping, the auric field clears up immediately.
Wow.
It can be that simple. I mean, it's that powerful. And I also have a Trifeld meter where I actually test where the EMFs are. There's definitely a huge correlation where cables are, where your boxes are for your routers and Wi-Fi's and all of that. It's definitely measurable. As David says, you know, when you're sitting next to it or sleeping next to it day after day, week, month, year after year, it's going to impact you. This is something that really interests me. This is why I joined the inner circle. I've just had really amazing insights and met great people. I met you, Shahiroz, and I know you hold every week a wonderful, wonderful session teaching people, explaining products, and you go into all kinds of other incredible metaphysical and life conversations.
Absolutely.
So it's such a service. And I think it's so beneficial for people to have that understanding of their environment and how frequencies can impact us and really empower us and heal us versus create disharmony. To be aware of that is such a gift. It's great knowledge to have.
So give us examples now of specific experiences you've had with, well, maybe not just David Sarita's equipment, but any of the modality equipments you've worked with, and what do you think is happening there?
Mm. When I first started to work with the Star Coil, I had a lot of osteoporosis. From a physical level, of course, that's the bone disintegrating, right? There's less calcium in it. It becomes brittle. There are a lot of more holes in there. From a psychological, emotional perspective, it's oftentimes linked to a feeling of devaluation, self-devaluation. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm not going to make it. I don't have the strength or the skill set. So you belittle yourself in some way. A secondary symptom that usually comes is anemia with these two elements.
Right.
So I actually did a bone density scan and it was terrible. The technician came out and said, your bones look like an elderly person's, like an 80, 90-year-old. It's in terrible shape and you're in your 30s. What is going on with you? You know, and years of taking calcium did not help. Then, of course, later I understood that you actually need fats to absorb calcium and minerals. So there's a combination that you can't just take calcium. That's not going to work.
Right.
That's actually harmful, in fact. That's another conversation for another day.
So recently, I don't know, I was craving milk for some reason. I was craving milk, but everything out there says you shouldn't have milk because of the antibiotics, the lactose, etc. And I'm like, screw it. I'm craving milk. I'm going to drink milk. So I went and got milk, and it just made me feel so good to drink milk. It was like, why does this feel so good? Why does it feel so good to drink milk? And somebody said, again, you shouldn't be drinking it. Don't drink it, blah, blah, blah. So I went and got myself goat milk. I drank goat milk, and I'm just loving my experience drinking milk. I totally forgot how good milk was and how good milk tastes, all because of propaganda, media, whatever you want to call it, right? Whether it's good for me or bad for me, I don't know, intellectually, but I know emotionally it's been really good for me. When you drink milk, you have the fats and the calcium taking care of that. Nature's taking care of that, right?
Yes, it's not one compound that's derived in a laboratory.
Right.
When you're eating whole foods, you're getting the incredible combination that Mother Nature has perfectly proportioned.
Absolutely.
Perfect synergy and balance.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and if you intuitively felt like you needed to have the milk, then it's good that you followed your instinct. And the fact that your body took it in and you felt really good
is a good sign. Yeah. I've learned over the years, if you're in a happy, content, good feeling state, it's just follow that state. If you're not feeling good, then listen to what's happening inside you and act on whatever it is that you're being communicated to from within, right? And move back into that state of contentness again.
Yes. It's that content, relaxed space where you're actually open to the greater consciousness, the wisdom, actually hearing it and feeling it.
Right in the center, not too much on one side, not too much on the other, but right in the center. That's where magic happens, I like to say.
Yeah, I like that. Yes.
Yeah. So you were talking about osteoporosis and you were talking about the devices and you had osteoporosis. So what was the effect and what do you think happened?
So I did a couple of things. One, I really looked at that sense of where am I feeling this pressure? Where's this self-evaluation coming from? Number one. Number two, I looked at my diet. My diet was really good, but I shifted it so that was even better. And number three, I did the bone programs that David has with the Star Coil. And I had just gotten the star coil at that point. So unbeknownst, I mean, I probably overdid it a little bit. I did the bone programs every day. After 2 months, I went back and looked at the bone density, and it was fantastic. I had gained weight. And when I say gained weight, my clothes were the same size, my bones got heavier.
Right.
I gained bone density.
Wow.
It was verified later. So this was fantastic. This was fantastic. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so amazing and so amazing to hear. Let's talk about that weight gain and weight loss. So if somebody's experiencing weight gain or weight loss, are there emotional things associated with that? And if so, how does one traverse those?
Mm. Yeah, this is a very complex question. With weight gain, both weight gain and weight loss, there are various emotional components. Let's start with
Right.
weight gain. So oftentimes, traditionally, we say you're protecting yourself from something, right?
Right.
So from getting hurt in some way, or you're using that to hide behind you're not feeling comfortable to show up as your true authentic self. Or it's an excuse to prevent you from having to do something. Like if you really hate doing a certain activity and you know this would be the answer, then it makes sense your body will create a situation where you can use that as an excuse to say no because you're not strong enough to say no on your own and create that boundary and say, no, actually, I'm not into this. Thanks, but no thanks. So these are some of the issues that can come up and be a cause behind that. Of course, there are also hormonal imbalances, which again is typically emotional or due to toxicity. There's so many toxins that imbalance our endocrine system that will or can cause weight gain
Right.
or fluctuations in weight. When our thyroid is overstrained and if we have certain viral infections that really impact the thyroid, then again, we can have fluctuations in weight. The other reason for weight gain, which is usually the last reason anyone thinks of, is when you have toxins in your body that you're not able to flush out because your system is overwhelmed with toxins to begin with. So if your liver is already working at the maximum capacity, your kidneys are working at maximum capacity, your lymphs are clogged up, right? You're not able to move all that stuff out of your system. Then what happens when you're introducing more of these toxins through food, through birth control, through breathing the polluted air, through wearing synthetic fibers on your skin, through lots of different factors. The body creates fat cells, extra fat cells, to store that toxin to protect you, because this is the safest place for your body to store those toxins to prevent it from going into the brain, the bone marrow, from the more critical areas of your system. It's a very intelligent reaction to protect you, to keep you from getting worse, really.
Right.
So these are some of the factors that we discuss when someone says, I'm having issue with my weight. Well, it could be hormonal, it could be toxins, it could be mental, emotional. So this is where we start that conversation. There are many other reasons, but this is more of an overview right now.
Right. And now let's go to weight loss or loss of weight. What's that?
So loss of weight also, many different reasons. Parasites, one reason. Number two is depending on how a person processes stress, our body will reduce cellular production. So instead of creating extra cells, you will now remove cells from your system. For example, you might have an ulcer in your stomach due to stress. So when you are reacting to stress, depending on the thinking pattern of the mind, and if you're right or left-handed, right or left-brained predominantly, then your body will reduce. It's a stress reaction typically. So then we say, well, what is causing so much stress that you're wasting away, essentially?
Right.
And again, it's a mental thing, right? Because some people have, for example, bulimia or anorexia. This is also due to a certain mindset that they're really struggling with, internal emotional pain that is very deep, right? It's very, very deep and very difficult. Sometimes people are doing this to themselves in an effort to show up with a certain body type because they feel that much pressure to perform to look a certain way, to be perceived a certain way. That's a very hard life to live. Yeah. So again, it comes back to the mind.
It comes back to the mind, right?
Yeah.
So now what I would like to do is come to present day. There's a lot of things you've been doing that are extracurricular, projects you've been working on, and passions that you've been working on that I'd like you to speak about, and what brought you to those and where we're going from here.
I'd love to share some more. One of the side projects I've had is writing books and creating books with others as well.
Right.
Stories are this beautiful universal way to transmit universal truths where everybody, regardless of culture or background, can relate to. At the end of the day, we are all human. We all want to be seen and heard. We want to be loved and be loving. We want to feel valued. We want to be able to share value and show up as our authentic selves. This is the dream of the soul, right? Now, the experience can be very different. And that's the journey of our lives here. So during the pandemic, there were a lot of challenges that just about everyone faced. And my nephews, my eldest nephews, who were 6 and 9 years old at the time, spent a lot of time with the family out at the cottage. We were in the woods a lot, in the cabin. And what we did together was to find different ways to handle anxiety and anger and stress and resentment. We did different breathing techniques. I used tuning forks on them and showed them how to do tapping.
Right.
We down in the soft moss and just listen to where we were feeling tension in the body, and we breathe through it. We learned different techniques for pivoting the mind into a different type of thinking. I read various stories to them at night. We did a different meditation every night so they could experience a different way of regulating and recognizing internal states of awareness.
Right.
They also had a lot of questions. Aunt Yvette, there's a bully online, or there's a bully at school. What would you do in my place? Or I really feel angry about this. I said, well, let's talk about that. So we had a lot of questions, question and answers. So instead of answering them directly, I helped them become more self-reflective. I would ask them to reflect on the situation.
Right.
Why do you think the bully is being mean? Do you think it's personal? Is it just at you or at everybody? Do you think the bully is feeling really happy and good? If he or she was, do you think they'd be acting like this? No. Okay, so where do you think that's coming from? Do you have more compassion now? Okay, but it's still okay to say no and set boundaries. So how can you do that? So we had a lot of these beautiful, heartfelt conversations while learning about herbs, how to harvest them, how to make tinctures, getting up early, walking barefoot. So really doing a lot of beautiful exercises and activities to help them regulate and learn new techniques for that. The stories that I began writing was born out of these conversations and real life situations and challenges.
Amazing.
And my eldest nephew, Ethan, and my second eldest, Lucas, they're the main characters in this first series of books. And the first series is all about learning about the chakras and how they can help you navigate through life's challenge. Each book goes through one chakra at a time. Each one has a challenge that Ethan goes through, and you learn how to navigate through the lens of that chakra. So it's incredibly powerful. What I love about it is that this is not just for children, it's for adults, because all of us get nervous in different situations, get anxious in different situations, feel upset at different situations.
Right.
The tools and techniques that are used by top coaches and athletes today are woven into the stories.
Right.
So as you're going through the stories, you're actually learning. You don't have to go to the coach. You can read the books and already get so much value and top tips. At the end of the different chapters, there's a list of self-reflective questions that the adult and the child ask each other to get to know each other better and say, how do you feel in this situation? How did you handle when you were most afraid in your life? Is it ever okay to lie? What if you're lying to save someone or prevent something worse from happening? What do you define as a lie? How do you speak your truth when you're really nervous of the consequences?
Right.
You know, how do you stay true to your values when you're in this bind? So there are so many situations in the book that reflect these common human experiences and give an option for people to really discover more of what is true for them, and to feel what hunger feels like, what thirst feels like, what it's like to be alone, and how we can navigate those moments and make different choices and learn about each other, and thereby actually have more compassion for each other and get closer to each other as a result. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So it's kind of
excited
like,
to read yours. I definitely want to go through those books and help bring those books to others, because when you share with me what life processes you went through to come to the conclusion of making those books, and your experiences, that the content that must be in those books, I get excited and I want others to know about it. The chakras are a very powerful aspect of us, our innate us. The more we get to know our innate us, the better we'll able to traverse our life experiences and make them more coherent with our desires.
yes, yes. Well, I'm excited to hear your feedback, Shahiroz, and I really appreciate your encouragement and sharing the information. I'm so excited, and I love seeing the reaction from my nephews when I read them the books. They were sitting there, is there another one? Read the next one. Read the next one. It's very fulfilling. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow, that's amazing. You also said first series, so there's multiple series. Can you give us an outline of what is and
Yeah.
what's coming?
Yes, yes. So this first series is all about the chakras. It's composed of 8 books. The first one is the foundation that gives an overview, and then the next 7 are each of the main 7 chakras, because there are many, but
Yeah,
there are 7 main ones to start with.
correct.
And then each of my nephews will have a series of books dedicated to them, where they get to be the main character, learning and growing through the stories, where the adults get to do the same by reading it. Another one is going to be called, well, it's a working title, but the 7 senses. So
Oh,
we often talk about the 5 main physical senses, but then there's also the intuition and there's the gut instinct. So
right.
we're going to be having stories where we get to learn about the 7 senses and how to access them and what they can be like, and really expand them and tapping into our greatness in a whole new way, in a whole new level.
Absolutely, because my first experience with, I guess, the inner senses was a book I'd read, and I can't remember the title of the book at this time, but it had me do exercises, and the exercises were simply this. Every week, you're going to concentrate on one sense. So, sight. You're going to focus on sight, and all you're going to do is look at everything and take everything in through your sight. Then the next week, it was your ears, your hearing, and then your nose, your sense of smell and taste and feel and so on. Just doing that exercise opened up so many aspects of myself. By religiously doing that exercise, my dreams were more vibrant.
Mm,
When I was doing the seeing exercise, my dreams were more vibrant. What was dull looking was now more colorful. Things would stand out in my dreams. So much happened just doing that one little exercise. And I encourage everyone, to explore your senses for
mm.
sure.
Yes, I think it's so wonderful to approach it from that playful side, where you really just allow yourself to be curious like a child and
Right.
just fun with it and really see where that can take you and what you can notice that we typically don't, because we're in that rush, 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 task, 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 get through the day.
Right.
And we're just floating above our true potential here instead of diving into that.
Yeah, because we know from science and quantum physics, etc., that what we see, we wouldn't see if it wasn't for our sense of seeing,
Yes, yes.
right? And
And
what we
how our
touch,
mind
we wouldn't be able to
interprets
touch if it wasn't for our sense of touch and so on.
that. Mm-hmm.
If you think of someone who's blind, they don't see anything, right? Because they're blind.
Mm-hmm. You know what's really interesting is that how the mind is connected to perceiving energy. And here we are talking about frequencies again, because what we're seeing is a frequency, right? Spectrum of the wave.
Absolutely.
Or hearing is also an auditory frequency. Touch, smell, they're all frequencies. There are so many reports of people who have schizophrenia, for example, and one personality is deaf or blind, and then when they switch to the other one, they're not.
Right.
Isn't that fascinating?
That
I mean,
is
how our
so
mind perceives and actually then creates the experience from the physical perspective. Yeah.
I believe those examples exist for the sole reason that we can recognize that we are not our senses.
Yes. Yes.
Because if those examples didn't exist, we wouldn't have that knowingness.
Mm. I am highly dyslexic. And what I notice with the kind of dyslexia I experience is that oftentimes I can't hear things if there's any background noise.
Right.
I hear sound, but my brain doesn't translate the syllables or the sound into something I can recognize. So it's not a volume issue, it's a translation issue in my mind.
Right.
And I went and did some testing, Erlen testing. I don't know if you're familiar with Erlen. What they do is give you certain glasses to wear with different colors. It's not just a different colored glass that you're putting on. They actually block off certain parts of the light spectrum to relax a different portion of your brain. What they're testing for is to see which portion of the brain is so overstimulated that it's overwhelmed and now you're dyslexic, for example. And so as you're testing the different glasses as it's relaxing different parts of your brain, you actually visually see very, very differently. It's really a remarkable test, and it shows you how powerful our mind is and how it's really our minds and not necessarily our eyes. And I have another client story to share about this in a minute.
Please, yeah.
And I remember, you know how they have 3D movies in the theaters? I can't see it. So when I put on the 3D glasses, there's no difference for me whether I put them on or off. It looks exactly the same. I see a blur of two different things happening at once. So I can't watch 3D.
Right.
I've never seen 3D in my life.
Okay.
Until I went to do this Erlen test. So we tried the different glasses, and then I put on one of them, and suddenly I leapt back because everything around me instantly became 3D. The pictures on the walls, there was a picture of a woman with two hands, and it looks like the hands were reaching out to grab me. And instantly my reaction was to step back because I was so shocked and so surprised. It was the first time in my life I saw 3D, or what I think people mean when they talk about 3D.
Right.
And we found the best type of glasses, sunglasses really, because my vision was perfect 20/20. It's more the brain's interpretation of light that's happening
Right.
here.
Right.
As soon as I was able to find the best ones that most relax my brain, all the dyslexic symptoms that I had diminished greatly. And my hearing improved, not in terms of my ability to hear volume, but the clarity is remarkable. It's remarkable what our minds can do, what our consciousness can do. So now I want to talk about a client. She came to see me, and she had, since her young childhood, very bad eyesight. We talked a lot about what happened in her life around that time. Her father had died around that time, and when she realized that her eyesight was becoming significantly worse very quickly, it deteriorated rapidly. We went through a lot of different things. So the bioresonance scan showed that she also had some toxicity in heavy metals. So we cleared that out. So there was a lot of healing that was taking place. But the eyes started to clear up a little bit. There was a bit of improvement, but not too significant. Now, this is a lady who's had very poor eyesight, almost to the point of being legally blind, if I remember correctly. It's been over 40 years of her life. So this was not something that happened 6 months ago. This was an ingrained, hard life pattern that she had been experiencing and living. And I recommended she speak with a GNM specialist, a German new medicine specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Hammer's
work.
modality.
Yeah.
I said, maybe a specialist can help you really pinpoint what caused this. I felt sure that there was something emotional underlying this and not a physical degeneration of the macula or something else, like an accident. So she did that. I remember I got a phone call from her and she said, I'm sitting in the parking lot of the therapist's office. I just came out and I'm so stunned. I had to call you and tell you what happened. So she proceeds to tell me, she said, I was in there, we were talking, and he was asking me different questions around what happened. And then we talked about devaluation, and he had a very specific question. Did you feel, when you got that phone call about your father dying, did you feel that you had enough time to go and see him before he died? She was saying to me on the phone, in that moment, she had this flash, this aha moment, a memory that was buried so deep, she didn't even realize this. And she said, no, actually, that was my first thought. I might not make it. I don't have enough time to get to him. And then he said to her, well, how's your relationship with time been since? She says, terrible. I'm always stressed about being late. I have a watch. I have several alarms. I have a clock in every room. I never feel that I have enough time. I'm very stressed about time. And she said to me, as they continued talking and this revelation came out and they went deeper into it, she could physically feel the muscles around her eyes relaxing and the muscles going down the side of her neck relaxing, the muscles in the back of her neck relaxing. And then she noticed a very strange thing, that the vision got blurred. So she took off her glasses and began to wipe them, thinking maybe they were fogging up. She put them back on. She says, they're even worse. What's going on? So she took them off again to wipe them, and she was taking a moment to blink her eyes. And as she was wiping, she looked up and then she stopped. She realized, oh my gosh, I can see clearly and I'm not wearing my glasses.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I have improved my vision and I don't know what just happened in the last 10 seconds where this happened. She put the glasses on and her vision was blurry because now the glasses that helped her to clear the vision up were now the problem because her eyes had healed. Right. The muscles that she kept from the tension of that thought were keeping her eyeballs at a certain shape because they wouldn't relax. And so now that her muscles and her mind relaxed, the eyes changed their physical structure. And now they're able to see clearly farther away and not just close up. It was that simple, but it took 30 years to get to the bottom of it. Yeah. And it's not always like this for everybody. But if it's truly a mental emotional trigger, this is how you can reverse that. It's possible. And I see it all the time with my clients.
And I want to ask you a question because you just said it's not like this for everybody. Why isn't it like that for everybody?
Yeah.
Or is it like that for everybody?
For some people, it's actually an injury. They've fallen and they've created a physical trauma to the body that they are not able to recover from.
Right.
I do believe that we can recover from a lot of things, maybe even everything, but I just don't know if humanity's at that level where they can heal everything and anything. I think really it's a mindset and belief.
Right.
I'm not there yet either. I can heal a lot of things, but sometimes even I have this block, right?
Right.
And I know that, and I've worked through it as much as I can. It's a lifelong journey.
Right.
Other times, people's belief is what blocks them.
Absolutely.
Their belief blocks them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they have the support and they finally relax, and then somebody whose opinion matters to them says something that triggers them, and it's a new cascade of hormones and stress patterns that instigates that mindset that created the symptom or problem in the first place. And they haven't overcome that trigger.
I want to share two things with you. I just had a customer call me and say they were upset with their purchase and the cost of the purchase and this and that. Then all of a sudden I get a call from them and they say, you'll never believe what happened. I'm like, what happened? I had it all set up and the frequency was running. It's been running for weeks. And all of a sudden I was climbing the stairs and then she has eye trouble. And she was climbing the stairs and halfway up the stairs, all of a sudden everything brightened up around her. And all of a sudden she could see everything more clearly, like instantly, like just halfway up the stairs. And it's been weeks now and it's still been the same. She has clear vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so fascinating to hear these things, right? And the only thing she changed was making the purchase of the equipment. And maybe I would think also coming to the relaxation of the fact that, okay, she's already done this. Now she's going to experience it to the fullest versus worry about the repercussions of the cost or whatever it was that she was worried about. She let go of all that. And the key here is letting go, right? Letting
Mm-hmm.
go of whatever was to be able to embrace what is.
Yes.
Letting go of the past to embrace what is right here in the present.
Mm.
So not the past, not the future, just right here in the present, what's happening right now. Just embrace that to the fullest.
This is what every great teacher talks about. Be in the present. All the techniques are so that you can stay in the present,
Right,
create a feeling of having achieved or being whatever it is that you desire, like it's already happened, and
right,
just relaxing about it. Right.
right. It's amazing. It's so amazing. The second thing I wanted to say was when you gave an example of this beautiful experience of this lady had the similar experience, her eyesight improved because of her mental realization. Then, after telling the story, you said, but that's not the same for everyone.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
while you did that unconsciously, I'm pretty sure, anyways, right? For whatever it is, whatever life experience causes you to make that, you know,
Mm.
do you know what I'm trying to say? Like
This is
that,
something you mentioned to me last time we spoke, is that not to use the word but.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I learned that lesson from someone else myself. I've realized how important language plays a part in what happens in our lives
Mm.
and how the words that come out of our mouth truly, you know,
So
in the Quran
powerful.
it says, be and it is. God said, be and it is.
Mm.
So, well, we're God's children, right? If we say be, it is when we're speaking from that present tense sense, right? And
Yes.
so if you can say be and it is, what if we say don't be? Is it not then? Right? So this word but does actually play a part in shifting what we said in the beginning of the but to the opposite.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great, great call out, Shiros. Yes. And it's so good to become more aware of our languaging. Looking at our world and our media, language is weaponized,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
used to program people in a destructive manner. And we don't even realize when we're emulating and using the same phrases, the same wording. So thank you for pointing that out, because I think that's a very crucial thing to be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that the more we become aware of what we say, because I believe what we say reflects what we're thinking too, or what our subconscious believes, right? Whether or
Mm.
not we do it consciously or unconsciously. And then that affects our outer reality. So it's super important to be aware of our words.
Mm-hmm. Swami Shivananda Radha has this wonderful book about power of words, I think it's called. It's a small book, and she talks a lot about this, and how mantras play an important role, but also everyday language and speech and why it's so powerful.
Right.
It's really programming. And how
Yeah.
do you want to program yourself and the people around you? By consciously choosing specific words, patterns of phrases, and languaging. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we can go to the New Testament, you'll get the same thing, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's the same message again and again in different words and different terminology, but the essence is the same. And our logical mind and our logical brain wants to fight it half the time. It's only when we come to the realization that why are we fighting it in the first place? We get a better reality when we eliminate the but. It's so amazing.
Train ourselves.
Yeah.
That's part of the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm running out of questions now.
We've had such a beautiful conversation. I so enjoyed this. Thank you so much for showing up with this beautiful presence and essence that you bring and have, and shining your lights.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me to have this chat with you. It's so appreciated.
Thank you. So is there anything you want to share with the audience that's a question I might not have asked, or there's a burning desire for you to share that you haven't? Is there anything last minute you want to say?
Love yourself more. Be kind to yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror every morning and say, I love you, and really feel it. Let yourself see your beauty, your amazing qualities. I mean, if we were able to love ourselves more, this world would be such a different place. It will be a different place.
It is a different place.
It is a different place, yes. Yeah.
Okay, dear.
Yes, and I would say in terms of any of the things we discussed, or if somebody would like some guidance on a healing journey they're on, I'm happy to chat with them. I'm still seeing clients, so this is also an option. And when you read the books, please let me know how it felt and what you got out of it. I'd love to hear.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about some of her experiences with the David Sarita equipment, I'm sure Yvette would be happy to share as well.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shahiroz. It's been such a pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure.